And we're back all off-season long. We're going to give you free agency, NFL draft, and everything else that's going on in this incredible NFL offseason. Stick with us. Be here. Hit that sub button if you're new, and also notification gang so you can be notified when everything's going down. Appreciate you. Welcome back to the Richard Sherman podcast, and free agency is ramping up, Metro. Everybody signing somebody except for our guy, Maxx Crosby. He thought he was signed. He thought they had a deal, and the Ravens said, not so fast, my friend. We'll take Trey Hendrickson and keep our picks. What do you think about what's going on?
What a wild time of the year, Richard. Free agency is in full swing, and we thought we had a blockbuster trade. I mean, Maxx Crosby going to the Ravens for 2 first-round picks. Now we're hearing overnight a little bomb dropped in the NFL that's going to have some ripple effects, no doubt about it. I can't imagine the other teams are too thrilled.
I don't know if you can say that right now, Mitchell.
Probably not the best choice of words, Richard, but I suppose the ripple effects portion of that will probably stand true here, Richard. Maxx Crosby ultimately going back to the Raiders. Before we get into the full swing of these free agent signings to be here coming up later this afternoon, we got to talk about Mad Max. Richard, I know you spent a number of years in the NFL. You've had teammates I know that have battled through injuries. What are your first thoughts and impressions about the Baltimore Ravens canceling this deal due to a failed physical from Maxx Crosby?
In NFL circles, I would imagine it's bad business. It's bad business, and it's a black eye on the Baltimore Ravens right now, and I'm sure other GMs are seeing it the same way, because they know how these physicals go. Once you handshake a deal, just about everybody in the NFL would fail a physical. If you went to a new team and you looked at them and you MRI'd all their major injuries and X-rayed everything, you'd find something that you could technically say, "Hey, we're gonna say no to this one." But for them to come in with all the information, Neil Elitrosh had already had communications with them. Them to say, "Hey, we lost Linderbaum, we lost Isaiah Likely, we've lost all these guys, and now we probably need those picks to replenish our roster, and we weren't expecting to lose those guys, and now Trey Hendrickson is actually much more affordable than we thought he'd be. Yikes! We sure wish we could back up and do a redo, and that's what they did. You know, they found a reason to say, hey, we're gonna take our picks back. We're gonna pay Trey Hendrickson, and we're gonna use those picks to replenish our roster because we weren't expecting to lose the guys that we did. And is it fair? Yeah, it's fair. These are the rules, and they operated within them technically. But for people to on the outside, the non-NFL people, it probably seems odd. They're like, oh man, his knee must be in really bad shape to fail a physical. No. There are guys every year that are traded that could be failed on physicals, like whether they're traded with an injury designation or they have an old lingering injury. A lot of times it's disclosed. When Percy Harvin got to the Seahawks, he had a hip issue that went all the way back from Minnesota, and the Seahawks wanted him, so they passed him on the physical. I think Mike B had some shoulder things that some teams might have looked at and said, hey, we're not going to pass him. But the Seahawks were fine with it. Yeah, you know, there's a inherent risk on some of these trades that if you're willing to take the risk and you like the player that much, you say, okay, like that's fine. And it's not that big of a deal, and it's not that uncommon in National Football League. This is very uncommon to have all the information, to make all those phone calls, to talk to the doctors and bring him in, and then almost make a decision that really has nothing to do with Maxx Crosby. It had nothing to do with anything Maxx Crosby probably did in his time while he was in Baltimore for that visit, and more to do with the guys they weren't able to retain in free agency that maybe they thought they could retain.
There's no question about it. And the bigger side of things here is like the Raiders have allocated a ton of their free cap space to signing guys like Linderbaum, Quay Walker, Kwity Paye, Nakobe Dean. They got Teron Johnson. I mean, they've made a ton of investments into this roster, not knowing that Max Crosby was going to be part of it. So as an organization like the Raiders, how do you respond to this news? I know that they're going into this, rebuild. They're going to draft Mendoza out of Indiana. They're going to have their young rookie quarterback under a rookie salary for the next number of years. They're set up perfectly having 2 first-round picks, each of the next 2 years to be thrown on this side of the fence with getting Mad Max back. Obviously, it bolsters their defense more, but I don't know if they're in win-now mode. I think they were, the way this played out, they were content with it. How would you respond to this if you're the Raiders in making this adjustment on the fly?
Well, I don't know. I would have to really understand their cap situation. I can't imagine they are prepared to take back on the $30 million that Max Crosby is owed over the next couple years. So there's going to be some maneuvering, whether that's resetting and relaunching him on another trade. I think it's hard to say goodbye and then hello back after that. Not that any bridges were burned or anything. I think this was an amicable situation, but I think everybody's minds were made up that, hey, we're moving on. We're going in a different direction. Raiders are going in a different direction. We appreciate you. Max was like, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. I appreciate everything that we, had already typed out the letter, had sent out the Instagram post. And so I think there's something to be said about that. I think teams are still going to be interested. They're not going to get 2 first-round picks for him, obviously, now with everything playing out the way it has. But if somebody offers them a first-rounder and maybe a mid-round pick, will they bite and just to rectify this situation and not have it be a absolute disaster and potentially have to go to some of these free agents and say, hey, we don't have the money now to pay you the deal that we offered you, are bad. That's, again, it's such a huge red flag for guys if a team does that, and I don't think they're going to do that. I believe, and I know people are out there like, this is going to really piss Max Crosby off, and he's going to be so motivated. Max Crosby's always motivated. Max Crosby's always playing hard. He's always playing with his hair on fire. This isn't going to change anything with that. But I definitely think another team is going to be interested, and I think the Raiders are still open to doing business.
Well, that's the other side of the fence. It's the Max Crosby side of the fence. I mean, here's a guy, he's 28 years old. He's going to be 29 going into the season. He obviously wants to play for a winner, and he deserves to play for a winner. He's one of the top defensive ends in this league. How do you see him responding to this? I know you said he's a consummate pro, but the reality is, Richard, he wanted out of Las Vegas, and now he's back in Las Vegas. How would you respond to this situation if you're him?
I think, like I said, the Raiders were comfortable with the picks, and they were comfortable making a plan without Max Crosby going forward. And I think that's the same is going to continue to be true. I think they're going to be comfortable making a plan without Max Crosby going forward. I think they're going to try to find the best pick deal they can and send him to as good of a situation as they possibly can that benefits both sides. But I have a hard time believing that he just comes back and stays, and they're able to still do all those deals that they've already committed to over the last couple of days.
Let's dive into some of your top free agent moves. There's been a number of moves this year, this offseason, and a lot of them affect, the teams that you play for. Let's start from the top, Richard. You've come up with a list of your top 7 free agent moves. Top of that list for you is San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Mike Evans. Who would have saw this coming? I mean, this is I'm going to call it, I think he deserves to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, Richard, with this track record that he's put on. Obviously, the 1,000-yard reception per season broke last year with his injury. But what does this guy provide to the San Francisco 49ers? The 49ers desperately needed a deep threat. Mike Evans looks like he's still got a lot left in the tank. What are your thoughts on Mike Evans to the San Francisco 49ers?
I think he provides a bona fide number one stability, consistency at the receiver spot, credibility at the receiver spot. A guy that can separate, win one-on-ones, command the attention of the defense. He's going to get clouded. He's going to get doubled, and he's going to create more space in that offense for the rest of those receivers and tight ends and running backs to operate. Um, a legitimate threat in this league, and he's a guy that's such a professional. Is going to have such a great and positive effect on the young guys that will be in that receiver room. He's a very smart, high IQ football player, a guy that doesn't mind going out of his way to help the young guys. That's the kind of veteran leadership. And I mean, I think San Francisco 49ers fans remember me coming in and how they felt, about, the age I was and all the stuff that came with that. But I think they also understood the impact that I can make on the young guys and on the culture of the team. And I think in some ways that impact still resonates a little bit today. And I think Mike is going to have a very similar impact. He's gonna impact the young guys in a positive way. He's going to be a great leader. He's going to be a likely be a captain on the offense for this team because of what he means to this game and the way he practices and the way he carries himself every single day. Um, but for Kyle Shanahan, it makes it easier to draw up plays. If you're gonna double his best receiver, then he can, there's a lot of space for Kyle Shanahan to work with. If you don't double him, he's a great route runner in the intermediate space. He's a great deep ball runner. He's a great one-on-one 50-50 go ball catcher. You can throw post to him. He runs the entire route tree very well. He fits in very well with the spray outs that Kyle likes to run and Brock likes to throw. So there's a lot of ways that this is a beautiful relationship, and you can just go back and look at the history of Kyle Shanahan when he has great X receivers. I mean, when he had Andre Johnson ate in Kyle Shanahan's offense. Julio was a little hybrid of both, but Julio Jones ate in Kyle's offense. Like he can do a lot with these receivers, and they be very very productive. If they can consistently separate, which Mike can, and get open, it's going to be a beautiful relationship.
I love it, Richard, for the San Francisco 49ers. This team desperately needed to stabilize that wide receiving room. 2 years ago, they had one of the better wide receiving cores in the league with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and obviously Jawan Jennings. And we saw that all go up in flames. I mean, they paid Brandon Ayuk. They traded Deebo Samuel. I don't know what's going on with Brandon Ayuk, but that's looking like one of the worst moves that they could have made. A team that needed to be very conscious about the money that they were spending, knowing that they had to pay Brock Purdy, chose to pay Brandon Ayuk, who obviously gets injured, deals with the season he had last year of not playing, adding a stable veteran like Mike Evans to lead that room with Ricky Pearsall. He's still got a lot to prove as well. I like this move for San Francisco. Next on your list, Richard, is the other side of this ripple effect with Maxx Crosby, and that's Trey Hendrickson. Going for below market value, obviously, compared to what the Ravens thought he was. They get him at somewhat of a discount, it appears. Trey Hendrickson to the Baltimore Ravens. What do you think about this pivot for Baltimore?
Yeah, I think this is a great move for the Ravens, a guy that's been in their division that they've got to see firsthand. Since 2019, he's had 79 sacks, 154 quarterback hits, and a 12.3 pressure rate, which is a little bit more than what Max Crosby's done in that same amount of time. I think since 2019, Max Crosby's had 69 and a half sacks, 164 quarterback hits, and a 10.4 pressure rate. So I think they feel comfortable with Trey Hendrickson's productivity, but also they feel comfortable with keeping their picks and using those picks to replace the guys that they lost. They just lost Linderbaum. They just lost Isaiah Likely. They lost pieces that I don't know if they were expecting to lose. So these picks can go a long way towards making up for those guys. If you lose those guys and just get the pass rusher that's really dynamic and you don't have the picks anymore, I mean, that's a worse deal for this team. And I think DaCosta recognized that.
Next on your list is a guy you just mentioned, and that's Tyler Linderbaum. He goes to the Las Vegas Raiders for a whopping $27 million a year. Richard, he is the number one paid center in the league by a $9 million gap, next being Creed Humphrey. The Raiders needed to get aggressive. You know, they need to change that identity, and obviously they're trying to bolster that offensive line. They have Powers Johnson, that was a new up-and-coming center from Oregon. They're projected to move him to guard. Linderbaum comes over for Baltimore, goes to the Las Vegas Raiders. You like this move. Why?
Because I think it really helps unlock Ashton Genty and everything that he brings. I think this is going to be a move that really helps his career and helps his ability to find an opening in this offense. This is Linderbaum's one of the best centers in the National Football League, and obviously the Raiders feel the same way. He's a guy that can command this offensive line, identify the things that need to be identified, plays well under pressure, and just does a great job. And I think with this Kubiak offense and the way they're going to run the football, they're going to run mid-wide zone. And they need a center that can get things done and can move, and Linderbaum fits the mold. And I think they'll surround him with other offensive linemen that are capable. But I think he's the most important piece to Ashton Genty's success, and this is going to go a long way to help him.
Are you at all surprised with the number value that he's getting, being $9 million more than the next closest center? I mean, I know the Raiders are going to have to overpay folks to come into an organization that is obviously rebuilding right now, but overpaying a center by $9 million more than the next closest one seems a bit of a shock to me.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a shock, and you know, it shows that how much they value him. But you're not going to see that happen again. I don't think this is going to be a deal that sets the market for centers, and you're going to see all centers are going to be like, oh man, from now on, centers are getting $27 million. Creed Humphrey is getting 18. I would expect the next center to maybe get 19. I mean, to pay $9 million over market for a center, just insane. But again, the Raiders have struggled and to attract you know, A-class free agents, you're going to have to overpay. I didn't expect them to overpay by $9 million, but they felt like that was necessary. And Speedtech thought this was necessary to get a guy that could change the dynamic of their offense, a guy they really had high on their list. And that's going to do a great job for him. And you know, you paying centers tackle money, we'll see how well it works. Today's show is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet, Florida's sportsbook. March is here, and that means college basketball takes center stage. The stakes are rising, the shots are falling, and now's the time to hit the hardwood with Hard Rock Bet.
Sign up today and double your winnings on your first 10 bets, max $50. That's right, your winnings are doubled on your first 10 bets. So if you would have won $100 on your bet, make that $200. That's how you start March hot.
And the welcome offer is just the tip-off. All tournament-long, Hard Rock Bet is rolling out daily dancing boosts featuring a live profit boost and a parlay profit boost every single day. More ways to shoot your shot, more ways to cash in with boosted odds. So don't sit on the bench. Download the Hard Rock Bet app today, and let's get the party started.
We shall see. The next on your list is Michigan State's own and former Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker, K9, fills the running back void in Kansas City, partners up with Patrick Mahomes and co down in KC. Richard, why do you like this move?
Because it gives Kansas City's offense a incredibly dynamic running back, a guy that can be a game breaker at any time, both in the run game and in the pass game. He can be very dynamic in the pass game, and I think that was a skill that I wasn't as high on with him before the probably last 6-7 games of the season for the Seahawks, but then he became a receiver that was very capable, a guy that became a mismatch in coverage at times in some of those games that were pivotal. I mean, I remember during that, I think it was maybe that Rams game, the NFC Championship, where they ran an out route with him on like a 3rd and 8, and I was like, wait, they're going to him at receiver on 3rd and 8 at a critical point in the ball game, and he made the play. Great route, caught the football, got the first down, and I think that showed a different dynamic of Kenneth Walker that's going to be very valuable, especially if they can get Patrick Mahomes back in the early part of this season. To have Patrick Mahomes and him and Xavier Worthy and Thornton and all the explosive guys that they have out there. I mean, this is going to be a nightmare of an offense to go against. And the way Andy Reid is gonna create these openings, I can't wait to watch it.
I love this move for Kenneth Walker personally. I mean, this is a guy I talked about at the tail end of the season. Unfortunately, we saw Zach Charbonnet go down with the ACL injury. I had the utmost confidence in K9. In fact, I picked him to win the Super Bowl MVP two weeks out, I think before even Seattle made the Super Bowl. I love this guy. Witnessed him firsthand at Michigan State, run all over U of M, 5 touchdowns in that game. Richard, this is a type of guy that will benefit being the true number one running back. He doesn't need to be a 1A, 1B guy. I think he can tote the rock 70% of the time. They find another, change of pace back behind him. Kenneth Walker is going to thrive. How shocking is it to you? Kansas City has not had a 1,000-yard rusher since 2017, Kareem Hunt. So they bring in a guy like K9, who I think will achieve that goal for them. I love this move for him, but it does scare me a bit for your Seattle Seahawks, Rich. Zach Charbonnet coming off the ACL. That is a tough injury to come off of, gain explosiveness, especially the way he got injured that late in the season. It raises questions for what Seattle is going to do to counter this move with losing K9. So that is one fear factor for me with Seattle. Next on your list, Richard.
Yeah, but with that, I think they feel really good about George Halani, and I think Kenny McIntosh is a guy that I think they feel really comfortable with, a guy that was really explosive and dynamic before, he got a little banged up. But we'll see. I think they're not out of it and done making moves, but I think they trust their depth, and I would assume they'll draft another one just for safety. Obviously, you don't just replace a guy like Kenneth Walker, but there's a reason why, running backs in this league haven't necessarily been valued in that way, because teams feel like they can find them and they can find dynamic players, even if it's by committee. Both in the draft and in free agency.
Next on your list is what the Los Angeles Rams have done. And this team is currently projected as the favorite to win the Super Bowl next year based on these moves. I mean, we know what Matthew Stafford and that offense can bring to the table. The Achilles heel to this team was their secondary. They addressed it in a big way. They're the beneficiaries of having 2 first-round picks this year, and they traded their lowest one, the 29th overall pick, for Trent McDuffie, and then they ultimately signed Jalen Watson, poaching both corners from the Kansas City Chiefs and moving them over to starters with the Rams. How much do you like these moves for the Los Angeles Rams?
I really like this move for the Los Angeles Rams because, again, they were so close to a Super Bowl. The Seattle Seahawks were the only thing between them and a Super Bowl, and as the Seahawks players have said, that game felt like the Super Bowl. And in order for them to get over the hump, they felt like they had to strengthen this defense and strengthen this secondary, and that's what they did. They got 2 guys that can play man-to-man coverage, guys that have won Super Bowls, have played in big games, have thrived in big games, play press, and that's what they feel like they needed to do to combat the JSN and what the Seahawks are doing. So we'll see if it works. We'll see if that gets him over the hump. Now, did I think he would get $31 million in this huge deal that he got? No, I wasn't sure about that. It's a different game, though, at the corner spot. It doesn't seem like interceptions are as valuable as the sticky coverage and guys that can play in a multitude of coverages in the way that McDuffie can, and the way that Sauce Gardner has shown too, guys that can press and play at a high level. So I look forward to seeing how this goes. Obviously, McDuffie and his matchup versus a guy like Mike Evans is going to be interesting, and I'm sure the San Francisco 49ers just normal size-wise feel good about that. But again, then Jalen Watson is your answer there, and a guy who matches up incredibly well with a guy like Mike Evans. Not that he's going to be the end-all, be-all, but I think they got 2 guys that have different strengths, different skill sets. McDuffie can also play in the slot, and really, really take this Rams defense to the next level.
Next on your list is Seattle Seahawks' own Woolen. He goes for a shocking one-year deal to the Philadelphia Eagles, making $15 million this upcoming season. I know you like this move for Philly, but are you surprised that it was only a one-year deal for Reek?
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised, but I think that's that was his market. Is a lot of people feel really good about what he's able to do, his skill set and his ability, but are kind of in a wait and see mode because they wanna understand why his spot in the Seahawks lineup was so volatile. There'd be games he starts and there'd be games he doesn't play very much. There'll be games he gets benched throughout the game, especially early on in the season. I think late in the season is when he found his rhythm and started to play really well. It seemed like something clicked for him and he was tackling well. He was all over the place. And I think in Vic Fangio's system, he's going to thrive. Opposite of Quinyon Mitchell, I think that's going to be they're going to be one of the most dynamic pair of corners in the National Football League. Obviously, two of the most athletic corners on the football field. But with the way Vic Fangio draws things up and that defensive line and the depth that the Philadelphia Eagles have, and I'm sure that Howie Roseman is going to replenish that depth. Obviously, they lose some guys in Nakobe Dean and things like that. But I think with the secondary they have and adding Reek Woolen to that, it's gonna be fantastic. It's gonna be a great fit, and I think that's a situation that they'll probably address midseason when they feel comfortable. Like, hey, this is the guy we thought he was, and sign him to a longer extension. I'm sure they're going to leave room for that, but this is a good move for Reek. He gets some money early on, gets to play for a team that's going to be a contender, going to be in a mix, a scheme and a defensive coordinator that's going to be fantastic. He fits it very well. I think he understands it. I mean, there's some wrinkles in there that he's familiar with that Mike McDonald ran in Seattle. So I think this is a move that works. I'm sure he would have loved the longer term, more security. Nobody really loves playing on a 1-year deal, but I think the game is starting to make sense for Reek in a way that this is going to be beneficial to him.
It's a good move for Philly as well. They needed a move like this. They've lost Jalen Phillips. They've lost Nakobe Dean. They lost Reed Blankenship all this offseason. Obviously they just paid Jordan Davis. They got Jalen Carter on the horizon. A.J. Brown question swirling. This is an interesting offseason for Philly. It's good that they were able to get this 1-year deal for Reek. I like it a lot for them. And then finally, last on your list, Richard, you really like the re-signing of Rashid Shaheed with the Seattle Seahawks. I know they invested a lot in going out and trading for him during the season. He played a key role for them down the stretch, albeit not a ton as a wide receiver, more in the special teams we saw his impact. Obviously, he was a deep ball threat for them. Do you think that this season he's going to get more involved with this offense as a wide receiver, and why do you like this move?
Yeah, I love this move. I wasn't sure this move would happen because of the guys that they have on the horizon to pay. They're gonna likely pay Devin Witherspoon, $30+ million per year. They're likely gonna pay JSN north of $40 million per year. And so I didn't think that they would necessarily pay. I thought Shaheed's market would be right where they paid him, about 17 a year. But I wasn't sure the Seahawks would be willing to make that move with everything they already have invested in that offense, with Cooper Kupp making $15 million a year, with you about to be paying JSN 40. So you're talking about $72 million between your top three receivers. I wasn't sure they would make that kind of move with everything they have going on. But John obviously saw his value and the things that he did for this team, both in the special teams, and I would guess with the payment, with the number, this they throw the money. They throw to where the money is. And when you're paying the guy $17 million, you don't just use him on special teams. He's not just a returner who's changing the game in that way. Like, I would expect his targets to look more like they did when he was in New Orleans. I would expect him to get, 8 to 10 targets a game. and at least 2 deep shots a game, just keeping the defense honest. And that's what I thought would happen when he first got to Seattle. I thought, okay, they're going to keep defenses honest. They're going to put one up just about every game. And you saw it late in the season and in the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, they did just that. They had a huge play early in the game against the Rams. They went for a deep shot against the Patriots that Christian Gonzalez got there by a fingernail to deflect away. But that's his role. He can dramatically impact the game and open things up for Jackson Smith and Jigba. And if he's used correctly, this offense becomes even more difficult to stop, especially in the run game. Like, you can't stack the box. You can't leave guys close to the line of scrimmage, because if it's even, then Sam and their rapport over this offseason and the reps they get together, that ball is leaving. I guarantee you there's going to be more trust, more chemistry, more rapport with more time this offseason. They're going to have a better feel for one another, and it's going to make this offense even more dangerous and dynamic. Obviously, losing Clint Kubiak is a huge deal. There'll be an adjustment period there, but I think, these guys aren't going to just forget how to run offense in 1 year. All right, fellas, I'm 37, and something weird started happening right around 34. Everything used to feel so easy. You get out there, the same workouts, the same diet, the same routine, but suddenly I felt like I'm moving through mud, Mitchell.
Richard, I'm right there with you, and that sounds real tough. Nobody warns you about that part at all. And when you're working out, you're trying to keep moving, sometimes it just doesn't feel like it used to.
Exactly. One day you're out there crushing workouts and staying sharp all day. Then the next year, you're wondering why everything feels twice as hard. And when I start digging into it, I realized most men start losing testosterone around age 30. It drops about 1% per year after that.
Which is wild, because you're still doing all the right things. Richard, I see you running. I see you on that Peloton. I see you cracking the workouts in the gym. But sometimes it just doesn't feel the same.
Right. That's actually how I found Mars Men. Here's the thing I learned. Your body can still produce testosterone, but a lot of it gets locked up by this protein called SHBG.
So basically your body has it, you just can't use it?
Exactly. I think of it like having money in the bank, but your debit card doesn't work. Mars Men is designed to help free up that locked up testosterone so your body can actually use it.
Richard, I want to be able to spend my money, and so my debit card better work. And it's not like hormone injections or anything crazy like that either, right?
No needles, no synthetics, just natural ingredients that help support energy, focus, strength.
And Richard, it's made in the USA, third-party tested, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and then they back it with a 90-day money-back guarantee. So there's basically no risk. Worst case, you try it and get your money back, but over 91% of users report higher energy levels, and there are thousands of reviews on their site.
So if you want to check it out for a limited time, our listeners get 50% off for life, plus free shipping and 3 free gifts at mengotomars.com. That's mengoestomars.com for 50% off and 3 free gifts when you check out.
And after your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support the show and let them know that we sent you.
Richard, I'm gonna take my turn here now. I got my top 7 moves of the past couple days. I'm gonna start with Malik Willis signing with the Miami Dolphins. And listen, I don't say this move because it's the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are in kind of a shitty situation. They gave up on Tua Tagovailoa, and they're cutting $99 million in dead money. And they needed a guy on a team-friendly deal that can help elevate this team. And I think Malik Willis is that guy. He showed you what he can be in Green Bay, right? I mean, everyone had this expectation of him coming out of Liberty, a small school. He was projected to be a top 5 pick, ultimately slides all the way to the 2nd or 3rd round with Tennessee. Wasn't really given a fair shake there and goes to Green Bay. And I think but for having him on that roster, Green Bay, it might not make the playoffs each of the last couple years. Jordan Love goes out each of these last few years for a multi-week injury, and Malik Willis arguably is just as good. He's mobile. He can make moves on the ground. I think he adds a very good wrinkle to this Miami Dolphins team. And for a team that really is probably putting themselves in a very unique spot, a tough spot with the cap space over these next couple of years, getting a guy for right around $22 million a year that has high upside. I love this Malik Willis signing. Do you have any thoughts on Malik? Do you like it?
Yeah, I like this. I like him getting another opportunity to start. With more experience under his belt, more stability. He's a guy that's easy to cheer for. A guy that, like you said, played at a high level when he went in there. He played at equally high of a level as Jordan Love for the Green Bay Packers. And does that change without LaFleur calling the plays? Who knows? We'll get to see. But I think I like this for him. Is this going to just be a Band-Aid to get Miami over the hump while dealing with all the dead money from Tua? Maybe, but I think this is going to make them a lot more fun to watch. And if he plays like he did in Green Bay in his few opportunities, this will be fun.
And the next one on my list, I like the Devin Lloyd signing by Carolina. Jacksonville Jaguars, have given up on some guys. I'm not 100% sure why, but they gave up on Devin Lloyd. He signs a 3-year, $45 million deal. The Carolina Panthers obviously are going after defensive stalwarts there, and they got him and Jalen Phillips. I like Devin Lloyd. He's not on the field all the time. He's on the field about 70% of the time, but I think he brings a unique skill set to that defense. And with a team loaded with a lot of young stars, in the horizon, and a team that just made the playoffs, albeit in a very weak division, I think adding veterans like Phillips and Devin Lloyd is the next thing to push them to that next level of actually being an above 500 team and winning that division as well. Do you like what you see from Carolina thus far in the offseason?
Yeah, I like this move. I think it's a solid move. A player that did a great job last year creating turnovers, made himself some money. They're a young, fun team in a division that hasn't been so great, in a division that just lost, whose division champion just lost one of their most consistent players. So I think this helps them. This helps the Carolina Panthers just as the Jalen Phillips trade does. I'm not sure $30 million was the number I'd pay for Jalen Phillips after the injuries that he sustained and things like that over the years. But he is a dynamic rusher who can get to the quarterback, and pass rushers are a premium in this National Football League. But I think this helps them, and I do like the pick.
Next on my list, and I'm going to probably combine these two, and I don't mean to be a homer, but I got to incorporate my Detroit Lions into this somehow, some way. Richard, the Detroit Lions need to thread the needle this offseason. They kind of lost their identity last year. Their offensive line took a huge hit after the draft when Frank Ragnow, perennial all-pro center, announces his retirement. And the team just scrambled from there on in. They moved their guard, Graham Glasgow, to center, and they inputted the rookie, Tate Radledge, in at guard. And we just saw them struggle, especially up the middle on the interior side of that offensive line. I mean, even when Gibbs was running wild against the Giants and some of these other teams, they were running them outside of Penei Sewell. So they needed some guys that can move bodies in the middle, and they lean on Cade Mays, and they get him for a 3-year, $25 million deal, the center from Carolina. Seeing what Linderbaum went for, I know a lot of folks in Detroit had their eyes on Tyler Linderbaum, but the reality is Detroit did not have the luxury of cap space. They've got to pay a lot of their up-and-coming stars. They just paid Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, obviously Goff, etc., and they've got a number of them to pay in the next couple years. So they really had to thread the needle this offseason, and I think getting a guy like Cade Mays, who can be a dependable starter for this team, start to provide some stability in that center, the Lions can hopefully return to a dominant offensive line in the next couple years. And then they pair that with Isaiah Pacheco on a 1-year, $1.8 million deal. I know it's not the flashiest move, but Detroit has become known as a Sonic and Knuckles, pound it down the middle, run the ball team. And ultimately they had to move off. They had to make some, not so fan favorite decisions this offseason and move away from David Montgomery, who is signed for the next 2 years at a pretty reasonably large cap hit. So they trade him, get a 4th round pick, add Juice Scruggs, and ultimately lean on Isaiah Pacheco from the Kansas City Chiefs. This guy runs like his hair is on fire. He fractured his leg in 2024. We saw a bit of a downturn last year with his usage, and obviously them bringing back in Kareem Hunt. But in terms of a buy low option for Detroit, I love this fit for them. Your thoughts on what Detroit's been able to do with Cade Mays and Isaiah Pacheco. Do you like it?
Yeah, I like it. I don't love it, but I mean, like you said, they're in a bind. They did that big deal with Amon-Ra. They did the big deal with Aiden Hutchinson. You got Jared Goff on their contract. It looks like they're gonna let go Taylor Decker, which is an interesting move, and Penei Sewell's getting his money. But I don't know how much Isaiah Pacheco has left in the tank. Not a big guy to begin with, and you talk about the shelf life with running backs and how quickly they could, go off that ledge. But for 1 year, 1.8, it's a low buy, low risk. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs is not going to leave the field as often as he used to, and I think that's going to be something that Detroit fans are going to have to live with. He's not going to be off the field as much. He's going to be on the field. He's going to take more reps and more hits than he has any other season because you don't have David Montgomery now. Will Isaiah Pacheco spell him at times? No question about that. But I like the Cade Mays signing. It was a need position signing. It should work well. I'm interested to see what other moves they make to strengthen that offensive line. And to really give themselves a chance on defense because they need more pass rush. They ask a lot of their corners in man-to-man coverage. I think that's going to have to be adjusted. How healthy does Brian Branch come back and things like that? Questions like that are going to have to get answered this offseason and season.
Next on the list, staying in division in the NFC North, the Chicago Bears. There's been some turnover on their roster. They've had to adapt. They lost their center Dahlman to retirement, and they've lost a couple guys in their secondary. But they bring in Seattle Seahawks, Kobe Bryant on a 3-year, $40 million deal. Richard, you can speak to him better than I can, but he's a versatile guy that can play corner or safety. I know he started to really make his money when he moved to safety in Seattle. Richard, I like this move. I like his versatility that he brings in the secondary. But you can speak better to him than I can. I mean, how much do you like Kobe Bryant's game? Do you think he's a good fit with Chicago?
I love Kobe Bryant's game, and I love how he's adapted to the NFL. Sometimes you got to get in where you fit in the National Football League, and the corner room got kind of crowded on him. They drafted some guys. Reek played really well, and I think he was just trying to find a way to get on the field. He was playing nickel. He started to play inside and found a home at safety, and I think that just increased his value and increased his versatility, and he ends up being a guy that can really play all over the field. He can play that rover role. He can play similar to the role that Nick Emmanwori plays for the Seattle Seahawks. Like he can cover. He can be a nickel. He can be a deep field safety. He can really play at any spot in the secondary when asked. And I think that kind of versatility is what you need in today's day and age where there's so many receivers and so many positionless players on offense, tight ends that play like receivers and running backs that play like receivers and receivers that will go in the backfield and things like that. You need more versatile Swiss Army knives on defense, and that's what Kobe Bryant is.
Next on my list, number 6, Braden Smith from the Indianapolis Colts signs on a 2-year, $25 million deal with the Houston Texans. It's a right tackle. He's known for his powerful run blocking. Obviously we saw what happened in Indy last year with Jonathan Taylor's resurgent year. The Houston Texans desperately need O-line help. There's been a lot of fluctuation this past offseason. We know what's going on, in terms of the quarterback play and how that's dwindled over the last couple of years. They need somebody that can come in and provide some stability there on that O-line. Not to mention they just traded for David Montgomery. I really like this move for the Texans. And then finally, my number 7, I'm loving what the New York Giants are doing right now, bringing in Isaiah Likely, giving Jackson Dart some weapons. You see John Harbaugh bring a couple of his guys over from Baltimore, Isaiah Likely, Patrick Ricard. But I really like Isaiah Likely's game. He's a unique tight end. He's a playmaker with the ball in his hands. I think he adds, with him and Theo Johnson, a nice 1-2 combo at tight end. I really like the Giants going into this year. You got any thoughts about Isaiah Likely, Rich?
Yeah, I like the pick. I mean, you need a safety blanket, and he was using his tight ends last year. You talked about Theo Johnson and the rapport they had. I think Isaiah Likely fits it very well. Following John Harbaugh to the Giants. I like the moves they made on defense too. I mean, they have Paulson Adebo now. They just signed Greg Newsome, Javon Holland. They've really made some moves to really solidify this defense and this offense and gives themselves a chance. And then I hear them in the sweepstakes for Brian Thomas and his services. And if they make that move, they become a very fun team to watch. And they were already a fun team to watch. We watched them have a great game and really take it to the Philadelphia Eagles early in the season on Thursday Night Football. And if they can play better defense, this NFC East can be wide open. We talked about the issues that the Eagles have been having. We know the issues that the Cowboys have had. They've been great on offense, but have had issues on defense. Now they've solidified their defensive line even more, bringing in Rashawn Gary. But this guy, the NFC East is always a toss-up, and if they can continue to strengthen and John Harbaugh does what he did in Baltimore, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
They certainly are, Richard. You got to love the moves that the Giants as an organization have made this offseason. Adding John Harbaugh, this team could be an interesting one to watch going into next year. Now we can move to a couple moves that we are a little bit undetermined on. We call these the wait and see moves. Richard, number one on your list is Wan'Dale Robinson, who goes to the Tennessee Titans under the head coach Robert Saleh, who you know all too well. Wan'Dale Robinson's this guy that'll catch 10 balls a game for 50 yards. Occasionally he'll pop one off, but he adds a nice little safety blanket for Cam Ward and that team. Do you view this as an overpay? Is that why you got to wait and see on it? How much do you really like this move?
Yeah, it's overpay by a lot of estimations. Just because you haven't seen outside of last year, there isn't a season where he's had over 700 yards. And so when you talk about paying this kind of money, you expect a lot more consistency. Now, last year he had 92 catches for 1,000 yards, and really helped keep that Giants offense afloat. And I think that's a big reason why Brian Daboll brought him to Tennessee and probably stood on the table for him because at times during the season he was all they had, and he was doing a great job for him. But in terms of the consistency and the numbers that you expect, the season before he had 93 catches for 699, and then the season before 2023 he had 78 catches for 525 yards. So you're not talking about huge numbers and huge amounts of consistency that you're talking about. So we're in a wait and see mode. What can he do with Cam Ward? What can he do with Brian Daboll in Tennessee? Can he be the receiver that lives up to that? We'll see.
Next on our list, Geno Smith goes back to the Jets in a trade. This is an interesting one because the Jets, have spent a lot of money, this offseason. They bring back Geno, and they have the Raiders eat a lot of his salary. Do you anticipate Geno Smith being the starter in New York? Is that why it's a wait and see move? Like, what are we looking at here with Geno going back to the Jets?
Yeah, it's definitely a wait and see move because I don't expect him to play like he did when he was with the Jets. Obviously he didn't play very well. Didn't throw for a ton of yards, but the last couple years, he threw for 3,000 last year, 19 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. Not a great season, but the season before, he threw for 4,300 yards, 21 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. And the season before, his best, probably his two best seasons in Seattle, he threw for 4,230 touchdowns, and then he threw for 3,620 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. So he's shown that he can play at a high level and a Pro Bowl level if surrounded with enough talent and competent offensive play. Out there last year, he threw a lot of interceptions, and it was unfortunate. You know, some of them were tipped balls in unfortunate situations. Some of them were bad decisions, and I'm sure he could say the same thing. And he's the guy that would sit there and take responsibility for the plays that he didn't make and the mistakes that he made. But clearly, the Jets feel like he can come in and play adequate football. I think with them trading for him and not allowing the Raiders to release him and picking him up in free agency shows that they value him and they're paying him what the Raiders were going to pay him. You know, I think he's probably at $37 million or so a year. So picking up that contract, that lets me know that they expect to start him. Then he'll have Breece Hall, he'll have receivers, Garrett Wilson, that can be dynamic. I'm sure they'll draft more, and they'll probably look to solidify that team some more with the picks that they got in a trade. But I think this is could be a cool full circle moment for Geno Smith. I'm sure New York fans are holding their breath, are very anxious and nervous about this move, but this could be one of those cool full circle NFL moments that we talk about later on, or it could be a disaster. Who knows? But I think with the way Geno's played over the last couple of years, outside of last year for a really bad Las Vegas team, if he can play like he did the few years before, I think they'd be happy with that.
The guy I'm nervous for right now is my guy Aaron Glenn, former Lions defensive coordinator. He gets his first head coaching job as the New York Jets and gets thrown into that New York fire right away with a pretty poor season, to say it at least. So I'm going to be rooting for Geno, man. I want Aaron Glenn to have success. Love the guy when he was here in Detroit. So we'll be rooting for Geno going into next year. We'll see what happens. Obviously, I'm sure Garrett Wilson is got a huge vested interest in his success as well. And next we move on. The Bills make some moves, and they trade for DJ Moore. They gave up a second-round pick. They take on his pretty bloated salary. Richard, on its face, I did not like the moves for the Bills. I especially didn't like it because I thought they bailed out the Chicago Bears a bit. But the Bills were desperate for a wide receiver. So we put this on our wait and see list. Obviously, DJ Moore, it can be a solid receiver. What do you think he brings to Buffalo? What are your thoughts on this move? Obviously, we've got a huge question mark next to it, but what are your initial thoughts?
I mean, is he that much different than what they have? That's what he's a gadget guy. And, can he be a receiver that pushes the ball down the field and does some cool things? Sure. Can he be good in intermediate? But, so can Khalil Shakir, so can Josh Palmer, so can Keon Coleman, and I don't think he changes the dynamic for this team enough for it to merit a second-round pick. And that's the only thing. And now, is he a veteran receiver? Sure. But it's a wait and see for me because, and I know people are going to kill him for that last play of the season where if it looked like he gave up on the route and you're in the playoffs and the game's on the line and the ball's coming your way, and whether you think you're open or not, you run. But I think, he's not different enough from the rest of their guys for me to feel good about it.
And then finally, Tua goes to the Falcons on a $1.2 million deal. What are your expectations of Tua in Atlanta going into next year?
Well, I mean, it's a low risk, potential high reward. But again, like I said the other day, for the Miami Dolphins to pay him $50 million a year to leave, it's crazy. It's crazy, and that's a move that I'm not sure I agree with what teams have been doing and just eating dead money because they're looking to move off of players. And maybe the bridge had been burnt in Miami and it was irreconcilable. But for the Falcons, I guess it makes sense to a degree. Like, can he be better than Penix? Is this going to be a true competition? Obviously, the number that they're signing him for isn't indicative of the way they see him because they're just making Miami pay. If they would have paid him $10 million, then that would have just been $10 million that Miami didn't have to pay. So I think in that regard, it's not as much of an indicator of how they feel about him. And I think it's going to be a true competition. If they feel like this offense can be better off with Tua Tagovailoa, who has at times played at a really high level, and you're giving him two really good. I mean, you're giving him a good tall receivers. I mean, that for lack of a better word, he went from speed receivers that he couldn't see to Drake London and Kyle Pitts, who are 6'5" plus, and you can see him. You can get him the ball. And he's been accurate. He's a timing passer. He's a rhythm passer. And if he can find that confidence and rhythm that he once had, it could potentially be a really cool move for the Atlanta Falcons. But, again, that's why we're in wait and see.
The final thing I want to ask you about in this wait and see category, we while we're recording this, we just got news that Daniel Jones has signed a 2-year, $88 million deal with the Indianapolis Colts. There's two true quarterbacks out there that can go to teams and be starters right away. One being Kyler Murray, the other being, if he does choose to come back, Aaron Rodgers. Where do you think the best landing spots for those guys are?
Well, I think for Aaron, it's obviously back in Pittsburgh, with McCarthy now back in Pittsburgh. His hometown team, they won a Super Bowl together. I think that will be the landing spot, the only viable spot for Aaron Rodgers to go. They made a cool run late in the season. It seemed like he had a lot of fun and enjoyed himself. For Kyler, I don't know. I mean, maybe MLB. I just don't see a viable. I don't see teams holding him.
What about Minnesota, Richard? I mean, this is a team that's going to be trotting out J.J. McCarthy, and obviously they didn't show a whole lot of faith with him. Do you think Kyler would upgrade that quarterback room at all, or do you just trot out J.J. again?
No, he's definitely an upgrade over J.J. No question about that. I'm not going to disrespect Kyler in that way. I just don't know, and I know that Kevin O'Connell is a quarterback whisperer. I'm not sure that Kyler Murray fits that style of offense, and I don't think he can necessarily be the drop back, hit your back foot, throw it to a spot kind of guy, and I think at times that's been his issue, but maybe I'm wrong. I think if I'm the Minnesota Vikings, I'm still holding out hope that I can get Mac Jones, and I can make him the guy that can run this offense for the next couple years. Can Kyler do it? Maybe, maybe they take a flyer on Kyler Murray and bring him in. But the issues that come with Kyler Murray, I think are still going to be there, and they're going to be prevalent, and that's a bit of a distraction. But he has been a starter. He has been a Pro Bowler in this league. So you definitely, if your options are between him and J.J. McCarthy, you definitely grab him.
Finally, Richard, our last segment of the show, we got to talk about some of these teams that, in your eyes, are the biggest winners and losers. And I'm just going to mention some teams. You can tell me straight up whether you see them as a winner or loser. And let's start with the two that are in your own backyard. Let's start with the San Francisco 49ers, and then we'll move to the Seattle Seahawks. Would you categorize the San Francisco 49ers as a winner this offseason with the moves they've made thus far?
Yeah. I feel like the San Francisco 49ers are winners. They haven't overpaid for anybody. They got Mike Evans for an incredible deal, which looks like it's a $14 million per year deal, 1 for 16 potentially if they need to get out of it. It could be worth more if he plays this, with the incentives. I don't know what they are yet. Re-signing Eddie Pinheiro is a big deal. For them, they just signed Garrett Wallow. I think that's a good deal for them. I think they've retained their own, and just getting healthy is a big deal for them. And obviously, there's still some moves to be made in free agency. They picked up a couple offensive linemen that can strengthen their depth. Nothing crazy outside of the Mike Evans move, but I think they're doing the things necessary to continue to be contenders and keep themselves in the hunt. And the same with the Seattle Seahawks. I know the Seahawks fans are like, oh my God, we're losing everybody. Like, what happened to Colby and Reek? And again, this is what happens with winning and also retaining your own guys. You lost Kenneth Walker, you lost Super Bowl MVP, and I know they're like, a lot of people are probably frustrated with that. But again, you got to trust the process. You're going when you have good players and you think Devin Witherspoon is worth $31 million, that's what he's going to get. You know, you're going to give him $31 million. You're going to give JSN $40 million. They just gave Rashid Shaheed $17 million. You're already paying Cooper Kupp $15 million. There's only so much money to go around. You're paying Charles Cross, I want to say 26 or 27 million. They're paying Abe Lucas. You know, this is how the game goes. You're paying Sam Darnold, and they'll likely, after this season or sometime within this season, have to re-up Sam Darnold and increase that number substantially. And so that's what happens. And you trust the process. You trust the stability of the team. You trust that they've drafted well because you still have to pay so many guys. What are you going to do with Leonard Williams in the long term? Are you going to keep him? Byron Murphy's a guy that's going to get his payday as well. So those are all the things you got to consider when you're John Snyder and you're thinking about who to pay, who not to pay, who you're going to keep long term, who are the most valuable pieces in keeping this team being a Super Bowl contender. And obviously, they think that they can weather the storm of losing these guys. Obviously, Reek was a 6th-round pick, and he did a fantastic job for this team. Was in and out of the lineup at times last year, but finished strong, and they got a Super Bowl out of it. Kobe Bryant, another guy that played really well and earned these contracts that they got. But Ty Okada, when Kobe Bryant was out, you know, played well in his stead, and I think the Seattle Seahawks feel really comfortable moving forward with him and drafting for that position and with the draft capital that they have. They feel good with Witherspoon and Josh Jobe when they were dependent on to be in there and be consistent. I think they feel like they can bring guys in to play those spots. They're going to trust their scouting department, and they feel good.
And then they obviously lose Boye Mafe as well. So it's going to be an interesting, runway here for the Seattle Seahawks. As you mentioned, they're going to have to pick and choose who they want to pay, and then they're going to have to focus on the draft, which John Schneider has proven year after year he is more than capable of doing. Richard, we got 2 other teams to look at. Now, I'm almost coupling these 2 together because we got to revisit this Micah Parsons trade a year later. We're seeing the ramifications of it, right? So let's talk about the Cowboys and the Packers. A year later, Richard, all things considered, who do you think ultimately won this trade? We've seen the flexibility the Cowboys have been able to have this offseason without having to pay Micah Parsons. Whose side would you rather be on?
Well, I think if you just look at it as it stands, you last year you hope that move would be what the Packers needed to get them over the hump in the playoffs and to get them a deeper playoff run. And seeing them still end up a 7th seed and barely make the playoffs and another early exit is disappointing. Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys were not close to the playoffs. So if you're judging it by last year, you'd say the Green Bay Packers won that trade. But with the fallout that's come from it and the picks, the players that they've lost, and we talked about Quay Walker and now Rashawn Gary. If you look at the defensive line that has now been built by the Dallas Cowboys, it looks incredibly formidable. It looks a lot better, and it looks like one of the better defensive lines in the National Football League. You look at Quinnen Williams, Kenny Clark, Osa Odigizua, and then Rashawn Gary. That's a very formidable defensive line. That's among the best in the National Football League that you can put, and I think that's going to be an incredibly disruptive defensive line and very productive. And if they can be as productive on the field as they look on paper, it would seem that long term that Dallas, this could be a win for Dallas. This could be a win on top of the picks that they got for Micah Parsons
Micah.
But it's still a wait and see kind of situation because they have to go on the field and put out a product, and then Green Bay has to replace Rashawn Gary and replace Quay Walker, and obviously they got Zaire Franklin from Indianapolis to try to start that process. But Micah Parsons is still an incredibly productive player. He's an impactful player. He missed a couple games last season, but Green Bay is still a really good team.
They are. There's just a lot of question marks that are going into next year with them. They've lost a lot on the O-line. Obviously they're not able to bring back Malik Willis, who was, again, a staple in that offense out of nowhere, really. And he helped keep that boat afloat when Jordan Love was out. So, heaven forbid Jordan Love, sustains another injury. I wonder who they turn to, because those 4 games that Malik Willis was able to, keep them competitive and win the bulk of, you got to wonder if they're going to have the same success without him. So, if it was me, I'd rather be on the Dallas Cowboys side of things, but some will say that that's my Detroit Lion bias speaking. The last team here, Richard, that you're putting firmly in the winners category is the LA Rams. We've already talked about it, but obviously they were aggressive, bolstering their defensive back core. How much do you like from the Rams, and how, nervous should the Niners and Seattle Seahawks be about the moves they are making this offseason?
I don't think anybody's nervous. I think all 3 of those teams are really confident, but I think these are great moves for the Rams to solidify that defense. They already have a great pass rush. They have so many guys up front. You talk about Jared Verse, Brandon Fisk. They have the guys up front. You got Landman at linebacker. And then you go to the secondary, and now you have a very formidable secondary. You have 2 corners that can play in a variety of coverages and really clamp down. Trent McDuffie, both, as I said earlier, is versatile, play inside, outside. Jalen Watson is playing press, man-to-man. He can play zone. He can play off. He can play up on the line. He can play 2, 3 quarters, backside, anything you need him to play. So I think this helps them a ton in that regard.
And then finally, Richard, every year there's a team that goes from worst to first. And this offseason, 3 of the worst teams from last year are spending the most money. Which of these teams do you think's improved the most? The Jets, the Raiders, or the Titans? All these teams are going out and making some, eye-opening moves. I don't want to call them great moves, but they're certainly spending a lot of money. Which fan base do you think should be most excited by the moves being made by the organization?
This is tough. This is a tough situation, Metro. I don't know what you want me to say.
Richard, the Jets have gone out and got Minka Fitzpatrick. You don't want to just sneeze at him. They went out and got Geno Smith. Obviously they got the Mario Davis and Tavondre Sweat. I know none of those names necessarily move the needle, but there are a lot of veteran names. The Titans go out and grab a handful of guys. We already talked about Wan'Dale Robinson. They made a huge investment in terms of bringing in John Franklin Myers and Jermaine Johnson. And then we see a big payday for Alante Taylor. The Titans, to me, have added the most proven players. They've certainly spent the most money. Robert Saleh is one of your buddies. Do we lean more towards the Titans, do you think, here?
Yeah, my bias is going to have me lean more towards the Titans because I want to see Robert Saleh do well as a head coach because I love him as a person. But these are teams that we're picking early in the draft, and I don't know if these moves take them out of picking early in the draft. I think the coaching may help the Titans improve. They're not in the best division, but last year, I can't even say that anymore. I can't even say the AFC South is a terrible division because of the way Jacksonville played last year. Houston and everything they have on their defensive side. If C.J. Stroud can play, closer to what he played early on in his NFL career, then they are a really formidable team. They're a tough defense to deal with. And then the Indianapolis Colts, they just re-signed Daniel Jones for $44 a year. And when he was healthy and they were rolling, Jonathan Taylor was rolling. They just, they had a lot of great things going on. So, I want the Titans to do well, but that division is a lot tougher than it used to be. The Jets, they had a long road. You got to bring in Minka Fitzpatrick and some veterans to hopefully get you an interception. To go a whole season without an interception as a Jets defense, it was record-setting. I've never seen anything like it. And when you're a defensive head coach, that's a black eye against you, and I'm sure he was really frustrated with that, and that's why they're going out of their way to address it. They're bringing in veteran players that know the game. Mario Davis is going to be the captain and center of that defense, and I think that gives them some stability and credibility there, no question about that. But again, it's to be seen and to be determined. The Raiders, they're spending a lot of money on the guys that can play. But can they all play well together? And that's the thing. When you're at such these rosters were so depleted. When your cup is empty of sorts, pouring in some, how many wins does this get you? Does it get you to 6? Does it get you to 7? Does this make you a playoff team, a wild card fringe team? I'm not sure, and I'm not sure what in order for me to consider them winners, these would have to turn them from top 5 picks to playoff teams, and I'm not sure that does it. That
Well, if one of these teams can replicate the New England Patriots model, I mean, the New England Patriots were the biggest spenders last offseason. We saw them ride that all the way to the Super Bowl. I mean, you look at the Titans and Raiders, who both have, young quarterbacks. Raiders, obviously, with the assumption they draft Mendoza, the Titans with Cam Ward. You just wonder. Obviously, Drake May is a stud. If Cam Ward can take that next step, if it's me, I'm leaning towards the Tennessee Titans here, Richard. We've got so much more to talk about coming up. Obviously, free agency's just getting started. We got the draft around the corner. Richard, it's always a pleasure sitting down with you, my man. I will let you sign us off.
Well, I appreciate you joining us. As always, this is some of your free agency off-season news. Please stick with us. Hit that sub button if you're new. I know you could be anywhere in the world, but you choose to be here with us, and we truly appreciate you with all of our heart. Stay safe out there. Enjoy your day, and stay tuned.